Does anyone have any questions on Twitter or here in the room? We had one comment. Which was that the A.R.E. forum is actually not online anymore, and it has in fact been replaced by a website, AREcoach.com.
Oh, sorry. When it went out, it went away, but then it came back as this other animal. I forgot that was the name. That was what you were talking about. Right. Well, the forum's gone through a number of interesting moments. One example, a number of years ago, people started posting actual questions that they had memorized, and a lot of people got into big trouble because there's a huge deal. Obviously, if you're NCARB, you really don't want there to be like direct questions being quoted on forum sites. And so that became a real problem for them. And so there was a lot of legal issues back and forth, and then there were some other things. So it's been through a number of lives, but the new version has essentially the same sets of information.
Are there any questions here in the room?
Yeah. The Dorf books, so the question is, yeah, the question is about the graphic vignettes. Are there any good resources for that? Norman Dorf's books are a really great set. He was kind of the vignette guy for a very long time, and he did a bunch of these really kind of lovely little kind of self-produced books. You can probably still find a lot of those. A lot of that information is now actually has been taken up, I believe, by Kaplan. No?
If I could correct.
Yeah.
NALSA, the publishers of ARE
flashcards.
Published Norman's book, which is called Solutions. We have a couple copies.
Right.
At the office if you want to take a look there.
The flashcards is the one. Yeah. So that's probably the best one. But by far, the absolute best thing to do for the vignettes is actually download. You can go. It's like you can either download the program and do it on your computer, which almost none of you will be able to do because you have to have a 32 and not a 64. Blah blah blah. But you can also do it where you use your terminal, use your computer as a terminal, and can work off of the main site. And so definitely use the demos, test it out. Getting used to the program is a huge deal. So it's good to look at the resource books. The Dorf stuff is probably the best that's out there, although all the guidebooks will have some version of it. But by far the best thing is just to get on and get used to it because it's a very unusual program.
Can you talk briefly about how this webinar that we're doing in maybe 2 months or 4 months from now, our intent is to allow people to bring answers to the vignettes?
Yeah. So one of the things that we'll do on some of the later versions of this webinar is if, let's say, you've gone on and you've downloaded the program or whatever you've done the demo on one of the vignettes, and that happens to be the topic that we're doing. Like the next one we're going to be doing is structures. So there's a whole structural layout vignette. You can go on, do it, do a print screen of your answer, and then you'll be able to submit that to us, and then we'll pick and choose some that are sort of the most emblematic. We'll get through as many as we can, and we'll put them up on the screen, and then we'll talk about what works and what doesn't work. So then you can be part of that conversation. I'll have comments, you'll have comments, people online will have comments, and part of the whole point on that is that you start sharing tips about, well, how did you measure this, or how did you zoom in easily, or what are the key things to look for on the structures versus some of the other ones. So it's a way to have a kind of a conversation, and then we'll also probably go through some Q&A on some sample problems as well. So that's how we're going to be approaching it. The idea is that we'll tell you which topics we're going to be doing, and then you can go on your own and do it, and then bring that information to the webinar, and then we'll sort of have a whole conversation about what you found and what we know and how it all works, and we go from there. Remember, if you are really against the idea of the vignettes, you can hold out for the 5.0, but that's going to be a while. It's going to be many months before that's going to be a possibility. And like I said, the devil you know, my guess is it's probably easier just to do it now and get it done, because whenever there's a transition, it's always a little bit of a bumpy road in that process. So I would just jump in and start going. Any other questions? Yeah.
You talked about, you pointed a couple of external study materials towards certain tests earlier. Do you have something particularly in mind for the graphic standards? Any test or tests?
The graphic standards is actually, so the question was of the resources that I talked about, a number of them I was saying were sort of specific for specific tests. Graphic standards you'll find the most applicable in the 4.0 is going to be in the building design and construction systems exam, because that's where you see a lot of the kind of details. So things like, you know, where are the weep holes, where are the ties and masonry, where are the, you know, how often are the studs, you know, all of those kinds of things show up very easily when you're sort of flipping through the graphics and then reading the text of the graphic standards. But there's also a lot of information in there about planning elements. So for site planning, it can be very useful. For, you know, there's a number of different things. It's actually pretty useful sort of general document. Now, it's only so useful, don't spend a giant amount of time on it. It's just sort of a kind of a good one when you're thinking about something, you see a question about something, you're like, well, I don't really understand what they're talking about. One of the first stops you can get to, if it's those kinds of topics, is the graphic standards, just to get a little bit more information, and then you just go on, you're Googling, you're doing whatever, you're finding the other. But like, it's a good place to sort of give you a backbone, so because you start just opening it up to the internet, there's a lot of information out there, and it's hard to distill out what's actually useful. So the graphic standards is very specific to architectural practice.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
So we have a question here from Garth McIntosh. I'm not sure where Garth's from. He asked, what order of exams would you suggest and why?
So this is a question that I get all the time, and the answer is it doesn't really matter, just take them. But I would say I do have a couple of theories about it. I just mentioned one of them. If you're trying to do the gaming the thing with the 4.0 and the 5.0, and so you can only do 5 exams like that, I think that's a pretty cool idea. But what I would actually suggest is I would do the one that you think is going to be the easiest one for you first. So if you think you're going to be really good at the vignettes or something, do the schematic design. Or if you think you're really going to understand all the contracts because you've spent time dealing with contracts and stuff, do the CD&S. Do the one that you think is going to be the easiest for you, to give you an easy way in, so that you're not worried about the content on your first try taking it. And then what I would do, the second one, is I would take the one that you think is going to be the hardest one. And why would I do that? Because if it's the one that you're most likely to fail, you might as well do it right away, learn what you can out of that process, and there's a 6-month waiting period before you can then take it again. So you might as well get the one that you're most worried about it. If you fail it, well, okay, you've got plenty of time to do the other ones in between, and then you can retake it, right? So that's how I would approach it. Is just there's no particular advantage of one to the next. The only other thing that I would say about that is there's a number of overlaps between the different exams, and so you might want to think about taking programming, planning, and practice and site planning at roughly the same time, because there's a lot of information that overlaps between the two of them. So there's no advantage of separating them out by a long time, right? But other than that, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. Get that first, and then go to the hard ones.
So Aisha Jackson asks, I think following up on the prior question, is there any specific material for site planning and design in the PPP exams?
Yeah, there's a lot of material, and we'll talk more about them in other webinars. But there's a couple of on the Black Spectacles resources page that was starting off this. There's a resource line that has a couple of books that I think are quite useful. I'm going to blank on the name. It's called Sun, Wind, and Light. That's one of my favorites. It's incredibly useful from sort of understanding wind and convection and orientation. It's really graphic and straightforward, and has a ton of information that's very, very useful. It's not like reading a big, heavy book. It's actually all about graphics. I highly recommend that one. I just think it's easy to grasp. And then the other ones, you'll find bits of information in really all of the other ones. There's site planning issues in MEEB, in the MEEB book, in graphic standards, in the professional practice. All of them have different aspects to it. The planning things are surprisingly complicated, because it seems like, well, how hard could planning be? but actually it encompasses issues about soils, and it encompasses issues about airflow, and the fact that wind is stronger higher than it is down lower, and that there's a difference between facing to the south in the northern hemisphere than there is facing to the north. Like, it's all of those kinds of things, plus all the sustainability issues about cut and fill, and where are you going to put, if you're going to dig a big hole in the site, where are you going to put all that material? It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of embodied energy to move that out. What about how things, dealing with toxic issues, like if you find that you do an environmental report and there's a toxic stuff, right? So there's lots and lots of different issues. You're not going to find really one book, except for maybe some of the guidebooks, but you're not going to find one book that really captures all of that. You're going to have to sort of figure out what the issues are and then look for specific sets of information.
Stephanie Christoph asks, are the Kaplan books worth purchasing?
Yeah, anything that works for you is worth purchasing. The Kaplan books are very good. What I highly recommend is that you find a set and look at them and see if you like them. Personally, I find them a little too detailed, and so it feels to me like I get lost in the detail, and I sometimes lose the general idea in those. I think the ballast is a little better from the general, but you know, if it's more general, you lose a lot of the detail. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, and the flashcards have certain kinds of advantages. You know, they all have their advantages. This is why I suggest, I know here in Chicago, you can come to the AIA office. I bet most of the AIA offices have a similar situation. The big firms in town will all have some of the material somewhere. You can borrow it, take an afternoon, you know, borrow something for the weekend, read through a bunch of it, and just decide whether it fits to your personality or not. Any other questions? Yeah.
If I'm going to take the refresher course, is it best to take the whole course first and then do the exam, or do some of the portions of the refresher?
So the question was, we're here at AIA. We're offering a live class in this very room. And we'll go through each of the topics. And we've actually set it up. I'm sure there's other similar things in other cities. But here what we've done is we've set it up where we do a few lectures, and then there's a little bit of time, and a few lectures, and then a little bit of time. And the idea for that is that you can do those lectures, and then if you want to take that exam right away, you can do it in that middle period. You have a little bit of time. People seem to like that idea a lot, but most people don't actually do it. So I don't know that it's actually all that meaningful. I think it's just sort of nice for the folks that do need to. If you haven't started studying really yet, I think that taking the live class, any live class, is actually a great way to kind of, okay, this is how we're starting, and just run through the whole thing, and then you can figure out what you really need to spend time on, what you need to you know, buy more study books on, and all of that, and then go from there. But if you've already started the process, you've already started studying everything, the live class is probably more of like a tuning thing for you then, and then that's for those folks that are going to want to take a class and then take that exam right away, right? But that's only for probably some of the people. Most people, it's probably easier just to take the whole thing, and then you've got a big quantity of information at your fingertips. It's really about, well, what do I need to still study for? What do I already feel confident on? Any other questions?
Mark, I wanted to know if today's session was recorded so that people can watch it later.
Yep. So Joan is asking if Joan Pomerantz from AI Chicago just stepped in and asked if this session was being recorded, and it is. So we're going to be making it available to everybody. We'll email a link to all of you guys online here and in person, and then anyone can watch it for free. It'll also be on our YouTube channel and so on.
So, can I follow up for that? So I don't have everybody's email address. I have a pad out here. If your name wasn't on the registration list, please write your name and email address down so we can keep you informed about this. I'm going to mention two other things. Mike talked about security and NCARB and online posting of information about the exam. NCARB watches everything that's online about the A.R.E. So be very careful about what you say. If you have taken the exam, when you take the exam, there's a whole security document you have to sign. They mean that really, really seriously. Mike made reference to, well, it was a cheating scandal a couple of years ago. It cost NCARB millions of dollars. fix because they had to get rid of a lot of questions and create new questions. Very expensive, difficult process to create the questions. The result was the exam price went up for everybody.
So let me just say some of that just real quick so that everybody can hear it. So the big thing about it's great to help other people and to share information and have conversations about the exam. Just don't share specific wording of questions or specific pieces of information that obviously would be a version of cheating. Like that is a serious, serious problem for NCARB. It costs everybody a lot of money, and it's quite plausible that you could get blackballed very simply and easily, and you would never be able to take the exam and never get licensed. So take it very, very seriously. Having said that, you know, we're all a community, help each other, do what you got to do, but just not specifically. Like it's all part of sort of finding that sort of reasonable line.
Blackspectacles.com is the home of online learning for architecture and design. You can go to blackspectacles.com, kind of get a taste of this online A.R.E. prep curriculum we built with AI Chicago and Mike, covering all 7 sections of the exam. And there are free tutorials in every one of those courses. As a part of today's session, you're eligible for coupon codes for your A.R.E. membership. 15% off the monthly membership and 30% off an annual membership, all through the end of the month. And we're doing group memberships. So if you want to get one for your firm, or you want your firm to buy one for you, you can go to blackspectacles.com/business or just email me. We're running a promotion again where business memberships are 15% off as well. Our next webinar is going to be different. What we're going to do is we're going to sort of have a no-holds-barred Q&A session with Mike. It's not specific to an exam. Whatever exam you're working on, you have a question, you've tried to solve a vignette and you don't like your answer, you're unsure about your answer, put it in a PDF and email it to me. And what we'll do is we're just going to take them first come, first serve, and everyone who submits them will take an hour and Mike will answer them one after the other. So it'll be a cool event because if you actually have a question, you can get a real answer. And if you just want to see what other people are kind of wrestling with, it'd be a great way to learn from other people's questions and problems and so on. So that's going to be on April 22nd.